8%. Now, I want people to know that I'm working tirelessly and have been for months to try to avoid this tax credit cliff. That's why I have tried to amend the so-called Big Beautiful Bill to extend these premium tax credits for working people to keep their health care, but I was stonewalled at every turn. Republicans on the Ways and Means Committee that I served on voted time and again against my amendment, and even in the Rules Committee before it came to the floor. And if my colleagues on the other side of the aisle refuse to act, millions of Americans will lose their health coverage, premiums could spike every year, and rural communities, which already are facing the uncertainty of being underserved, will be hit the hardest. And that is something that I'm also working to avoid. Now, there's one more point about the government funding bill that I want to make. It was already dead on arrival in the Senate. So what does this mean for you? It means that all of you and your loved ones, whether you're in Nevada or across the country, it means that we're just days away from a potential federal government shutdown. This is completely preventable, by the way. If the House and the Senate and the White House could just get on the same page and we could offer a bipartisan solution, we could avoid this government shutdown. We could make sure that we restore the cuts that have been made to healthcare. We can lower the cost, and we can protect and secure your healthcare, which are the priorities that I am working for right now. By the way, Republicans currently control the House, the Senate, and the White House. So if there's a federal government shutdown in just 8 days, it will be because they failed to govern amongst themselves. For them not to even have the votes on their side to pass their budget is one of the positions that we're in. And quite frankly, I can't vote for what they're offering because it cuts healthcare to the bone. And that is one of the reasons that I've been standing up and standing tall on behalf of the constituents in Nevada. They can't get the job done when all they're doing is cutting healthcare and essential services that my constituents, all of you, desperately need. Now, just today, our House Democratic leader, Hakeem Jeffries, and the Senate Democratic leader sent a letter to President Trump demanding a meeting, given how close we are to a federal government shutdown that would be caused by the Republicans. From what I understand, the president has agreed, and that meeting is now scheduled for Thursday. So we will see whether or not that produces any results or not. But that's why I wanted to be in conversation with all of you, to give you an update about what's happening in real time, to let you know that I am worried about the situation with our healthcare and the cost on top of all of the other costs, to housing, to childcare, to groceries, to the energy costs that families are already being burdened with. This on top of these tariffs, which are taxes, which have impacted your bottom line. I know it's impacted small businesses, and now it's impacting your job. And that is why I have called on my Republican colleagues. How can they cut healthcare and the potential of a government shutdown, all to give these tax breaks to the very wealthy and to big corporations? What are the concerns that you have and that you want me to be focusing on in this fight as we go into these final negotiations over the next week? I know that good policy starts by listening, by learning from all of you, and by lifting up your voices and having your insights, which ultimately will impact your lives. So this conversation is absolutely vital. So thank you for tuning in. With that, let's get down to your questions, and I'll pass the floor back to Ivana for our first question.
Thank you, Congressman. While we are on the subject of the potential shutdown and the work that the leader is doing to make sure that negotiations continue, we have a couple of questions from Mary Lou, Valerie, and Maria on the practical effects of a shutdown. Could you give the audience a bit more context on how the shutdown would happen and what that would mean for them?
Yeah, so unfortunately, we've been in these shutdowns in the past. A shutdown really means that essential services that all of you depend on, whether that's Medicare, Social Security, the IRS, Small Business Administration, they won't be working. They'll be furloughed. And essential services like the airport, those folks will be working, but they won't be paid. And that is a hardship that really no working person should have to endure. And so that is one of the reasons that I am working and ready to work with my Republican colleagues to find a bipartisan solution to avoid a government shutdown. I don't want a government shutdown, but I can't vote for a Republican budget that cuts health care to the bone. I can't endorse the cuts that have already been made to Medicaid or to the Nutrition Assistance Program or to Head Start that directly affect the families in Nevada that I'm proud to represent. And I can't add to that more pain through cuts to the Medicare or the VA or Social Security or other things that the Republican budget seeks to do. And that is why we're asking the Republicans who are in control. They do have the majority. They did win the last election. So they have the control of the House, the Senate, and the White House. So if there's a federal government shutdown, there's literally nobody else to blame or nobody else's fault, but those who are in power. And that's why it's important to hear from all of you and to take your voices to this negotiation and to the work that we have over the next 8 days to avoid a potential shutdown.
Thanks, Congressman. Shifting gears a little bit, we have a couple of questions from Levi Schultz, who is a Southern Nevada advocate for veterans. Levi is concerned about how veterans can receive support in this moment, especially with the undoing of collective bargaining at places like the VA and the need to support our veterans. Could you talk a little bit about the work you've done to support our large veteran community in Nevada's 4th District and your commitment to veterans?
Thank you, Levi. Well, first, let me be clear. If there is a government shutdown, my office and the essential workers in both the district and in DC will continue to be available to take constituent calls and emails and other correspondence, and to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to try to give people the answers and the response that they deserve. Um, I have been working specifically to your question to protect the employees at the VA, both the Southern Nevada VA hospital that is located in North Las Vegas in my district, as well as those who work throughout the VA system, including on the claim side. It is egregious that the federal workforce, our public servants, including veterans, more than 30% of the VA, the employees at the VA are actually veterans. So for them to lose their right to collectively bargain for improved work condition, better wages, protection in their benefits and their work conditions, I think is really an assault not only on the public sector and our civilian workforce, but on the 30% of the workers at the VA who are also veterans, who have served our country and who deserve to be treated better than this. So we have filed an amicus brief with the federal court based on the lawsuit that is pending to try to override the executive action of the administration, because workers, particularly those at the VA and those in public service broadly, deserve to have the right to negotiate and to collectively bargain. And that is something that I hold dear. I will continue to fight for, and is one of the things that we're working hard to make sure is protected in that process. We've also been doing roundtable meetings with veterans um, when I'm home and in the district, to hear directly about the services that those veterans are receiving and any delay in those services as a result of the cuts and the delays that are happening based on the assault of federal agencies, including those at the VA. So if you are a veteran and you need support or you have a question about your health care or your benefits, please contact my office. You can call us at 702-963-9360. You can drop your name and phone number in the chat, and my staff will make sure that we follow through and we try to get a resolution to your issue.
Thank you, Congress, and thank you, Congressman, and thanks for the question, Levi. Along similar lines, Linda Smith asked about federal workers more broadly, not just at the VA. And I know you talked a bit, Congressman, about your commitment to collective bargaining for all federal workers. Could you elaborate a bit on the importance of the federal workforce and the work you've done to make sure that workers feel supported as they are dealing through this time of uncertainty?
Mhm. Well, absolutely. Thank you, Linda, for being on, and for the making sure that we continue to advocate for the voice of our federal workforce. Let me be clear. I actually don't work for the federal government. I work for you, the people of Nevada, in the 4th Congressional District, 750,000 people who elect me to do a job every 2 years. And that job is to make sure that the federal government that you fund through your tax dollars is responsive to your needs. One of those areas is to make sure that we have a federal workforce, a civilian workforce, that is efficient, effective, and responsive. And to be clear, there are areas of the federal government that do need improvement, and I have been working in that regard as well. But when it comes to funding essential workers and services, and then making sure that those jobs continue to be available, is something that is also a part of this budget battle. Look, every administration comes in with their own priorities, but what they do not have the right to do is to override Congress or the will of the people, and the Congress as a separate and a co-equal branch of government. We are actually the holders of the purse, if you will, and that we approve the budget. So what we've been dealing with right now in this administration is, even though Congress has passed budgets to support our federal workforce, the executive branch, the administration, has taken to these executive orders to override congressional intent, even bipartisan intent, in order to enact their partisan budget demands. That is not how our process is supposed to work, and that is something that we are working hard to overcome in this very difficult moment. Part of the reason why I don't really want a federal government shutdown is because in some ways this will just help the current administration defund some of the things that are essential to the priorities that all of you hold dear. But it also cuts to the bone healthcare, including the Affordable Care Act, Medicaid, Medicare, the Children's Health Insurance Program, on top of the cuts to nutrition assistance programs, on top of the cut to Head Start, and to essential services like children's research, children's brain research that deserves to be funded based on congressional directive. So these are some of the priorities that we will continue to work on. And I really appreciate your question, Linda. Thanks for calling in.
Thanks, Congressman. We're seeing a couple of questions in the chat about concerns on preservation programs and our public lands. Seth and Michelle have both asked about how we can make sure that public lands are protected and that preservation programs continue. And Edward has asked about the water crisis, which we all know deeply affects Southern Nevada and really the entirety of the state. Could you talk a bit about your support for public lands and for the need to make sure that we protect DOI and BLM's work in our state?
Yeah, and so just this last week, we had over 300 representatives from the Vegas Chamber in Washington, D.C. I met with county officials, I met with representatives from the Sierra Club and the conservation community, as well as home builders and realtors from Nevada. And, we know one thing is true. We have more than 80% of Nevada land that is federally managed by the Bureau of Land Management, by Forest Service, and by Wildlife. Those three agencies combined manage more than 80%. And in some rural counties in my district, it's over 90%. So whether it's economic development priorities or the need to prioritize housing and affordable and attainable housing for our workforce, we can't do that if we don't have access to the land. But we need to be able to prioritize that land for its maximum and best use, including for housing, housing that's affordable for the workforce, and that ensures that we have the infrastructure to support that housing. And that goes into the water, it goes into transportation, it goes into parks and other amenities that make a strong community. And so my position on this is clear. I am trying to bring down the cost of everyday expenses for families. And one of the biggest costs, in fact, more than 35% of Nevadans in my district spend more than 50% of their monthly income on housing. Another 20% is spent on childcare. And then you add energy cost and healthcare, that's your budget, right? So how can we help more families? We help them by bringing down those costs. I think we have to balance our land and land infrastructure with how we bring down costs for families. And one of the most important ways to do that is by having more housing that is affordable for workers and for individuals, including seniors and the unhoused, the homeless, who also deserve to live in safe and secure housing. So those are just some of the priorities. I think many of you know we did a housing uh, policy platform focused on three areas. One, cracking down on these corporate speculators that are buying up the property. So while we're working to bring more housing to the market and bring down cost, we literally have corporate speculators, one that's based out of Texas and another that's based out of New York, that are the largest residential property owners in Clark County. That has to end, and I have a bill that would address it. My Homes Act. Number two, we need to prioritize land, and land with the infrastructure, including water, transportation, and other amenities, including parks, within the scope. And then third, we need more market transparency so that particularly renters are not being taken advantage of through escalating costs with no transparency, these hidden fees that are buried in these leases. That's another bill that I've introduced with my colleague, Senator Warnock from Georgia. So those are just three of my policy priorities to move those issues forward from both a lands perspective, but also the perspective of affordability and how we drive down the cost for people in Nevada.
Thanks, Congressman. Along the lines of cost, we've heard from Joshua and Lori about their concerns around Social Security and rising costs for seniors, not just about the protection of Social Security, but on rising costs on things like prescription drugs. As a member of the Ways and Means Committee, Nevada's only member on the Ways and Means Committee, you have a front row seat to fight for Social Security, and you've seen what was happening under the debate for the big ugly bill as Republicans threatened Social Security's future. Could you talk a bit about your work to protect Social Security and make life more affordable for seniors more broadly, and what could happen if Republicans are allowed to move forward with their plans for Social Security?
Yeah. Well, let me approach it first this way. So, as the member of Ways and Means, our committee has pretty broad jurisdiction. I'm on the subcommittee for healthcare. We deal with taxes, we deal with trade policy, including tariffs. We deal with Medicare, the Affordable Care Act, as well as worker and family support, including unemployment, and finally, Social Security, of which I am on as a member of the subcommittee. Let me say this, 70% of the people in Nevada's 4th District, their sole source of retirement income comes from Social Security. For most of those families that have paid in over their lifetime, their average benefit that they've paid into, that they've earned, this is not an entitlement, it's an earned benefit, they receive just under $1,000. So for 70% of my constituents who the Social Security is their only source of retirement. Let me say that again. 70% of my constituents, 70% of those who are on Social Security, it is their sole source of income, and it's less than $1,000 a month. So at a time when my Republican colleagues, number one, what happened is when Elon Musk and the Doge Bros were in there, they were taking people's sensitive information. They literally had the largest data breach in US history and potentially have access to people's names and addresses, Social Security information, potentially sensitive medical and disability information that's in the Social Security database. There was a whistleblower who came before and said that that information was uploaded into the cloud, into an insecure cloud. And we've been calling on our Republican colleagues and the administration to bring that whistleblower forward so that we can get those facts and protect all of you who pay into Social Security. Whether you receive your benefit or not, if you're working and you pay into it, your information is potentially at risk. So that's number one. Number two is, you know, we have been working to try to shore up Social Security as Democrats. And I have, in particular, by introducing and co-sponsoring a bill to shore up Social Security for current seniors who are on it and for future generations for those who are paying into it. And we have a whole plan for how to do that. And third, by weakening Social Security, by closing field offices, by laying off 7,000 workers, by making the phone system inoperable for people who have a question, they can't get anybody if they call. It's actually trying to break the system so that they can attempt to privatize Social Security, which is, I believe, one of the ultimate goals. I just read a report earlier today that the administration, the Trump administration, is looking to increase the age of eligibility for people before they retire to even get Social Security, something that I fought against every year since I've been here in Congress, and I'll continue to fight against it. So at a time, again, when they have given tax breaks to billionaires, to big corporations on the backs of the working poor, They want to cut people's health care. They want to defund essential programs like Social Security and the VA. They have uh, made some of these programs and agencies less effective by laying people off and taking away their operational control, all with the goal of doing what? Privatizing. Now, I want to also put on the record the Social Security Trust Fund, because it's not part of the federal budget, it's actually a trust fund. It currently has $2.7 trillion in the trust fund. They want their hands on that trust fund. They want to take that trust fund and they want to put it on the stock market. Well, you know what I've told Elon Musk and I've told people in the administration? Keep your grubby, greedy hands off Social Security, off of the trust fund. It's not yours. It's the people who paid into it over their lifetime, and we're going to continue to fight to protect it. That is another issue that is embedded in this federal budget fight, though, because people they're trying to say it's a clean budget resolution.
I'm gonna go grab
There's
some food.
nothing
Hold on.
clean about it. In fact, it's dirty. It's dirty because they're already cutting Social Security and Medicare and the VA and Medicaid, now on top of not renewing these enhanced premium tax credits. These are the things that working families and families in Nevada desperately depend on, and we cannot cut these areas on the backs of the people of Nevada and others across the country, all to give more tax breaks to the very wealthy. That is why I voted no, because of the impact, the negative impact that those cuts have on the people that I'm proud to serve. Now, I know not everybody agrees with my position, and that's okay. But I'm here to be accountable, to hear from everyone. I travel throughout every corner of my district, including the rural parts, and I'm willing to listen, and I hope that you're willing to hear me out as well to make sure that we all understand what it is we're fighting for. And for me, I'm fighting for your well-being and to make sure that we're reducing cost, that we are restoring the worst of the cuts that have already been made, and that we are protecting your health care. Those are the things that I think are essential in this upcoming budget battle here in the next 8 days.
Thank you, Congressman. We know how busy these next 8 days are going to be. On it, taking things in a different direction, we have a number of questions, and two in particular from Carlin and Jasmine, about the state of immigration enforcement. There are some concerns about the way that immigration enforcement is affecting our tourism industry and making communities feel less safe, and around how the Supreme Court decision related to profiling could affect communities. You recently visited a detention facility in Pahrump and made clear that people deserve to have their rights. Could you talk a bit about that experience and about your work on this subject for your constituents?
Mhm. Yeah, so first, the broader issue of immigration policy is one where I agree we have a lot of work to do. We have a broken immigration system, and we need to stop playing party politics and actually center the people who are affected by the broken immigration system. And by broken, I mean it's broken for those who are trying to pursue a legal pathway. It's broken for the dreamers who are brought here as children, who have grown up here and who are contributing greatly to our communities and who deserve to have some certainty. It's broken for our TPS holders and our visa holders who are workers in our industries, whether it's agriculture or tech or hospitality. And it's broken for asylum seekers and refugees who are fleeing violence and drug cartels and crime in their own places. And we are one of the countries that has welcomed those asylum seekers. We also have a broken system when it comes to strengthening our border and ensuring that we have smart enforcement at the border to actually have a system that works. And I have voted in bipartisan ways to try to address those problems. But the core of the issue is we have a broken system. Now, many of you may have seen that I did go to one of the facilities. It's called the Nevada Southern Detention Center in Pahrump. It's located in the rural part of my district. I've been to that facility
Yep,
in
I
years
saw.
past. As a member of Congress, we actually have oversight responsibility over federal agencies as a whole.
I want
And
to let him in.
because of the increased uptick of what was happening with ICE and these ICE detention facilities, I wanted to do an oversight of that
Yeah.
facility. I went out,
I appreciate him for that, man. He's a real
notified them that
MVP.
I was coming. They refused to allow me
Yep.
to enter the facility. And the warden, who came out
I can
at the
believe it because I
fence
have
to
a
meet
neighbor
me,
that got
um,
arrested for
literally
getting treated wrongly.
said that I was a security risk while I was showing him my congressional ID, and called both the um, head of the Department of Homeland Security and one of the local law enforcement agencies, um, indicating that I was somehow a security risk for doing my job. Now, I've done that job in the past. I've been to immigration courts to do observations, and I've been to other federal agencies, including the Social Security Administration, the IRS, you name it. If it has a federal oversight and it impacts my constituents, I have done my job. They have attempted to prevent me from doing my job. So we were refused access at that time. My staff worked through the process, and we were ultimately allowed uh, back in a couple of weeks later, all to find out after we interviewed some of the detainees and staff on location that they did a whole lot of cleaning up and sprucing up of the facility in the meantime. Now, why is this important?
Because they're hiding
Number
it.
one, the people who are in that detention facility committed a crime, have a process, and
Bruh, this
and
ain't my
will
target.
ultimately have consequences for that. But they also have rights, and we have to ensure that we are adhering to that standard. Number two, this was a private for-profit contractor that works for the Department of Homeland Security, and they need to be held accountable and ensure that they are doing their job. Number three, that particular detention facility is on the list of one that could be expanded through this administration's new policies. And I wanted to know what the current capacity was around healthcare services, including mental health care. I wanted to know what the
You
housing
answered all
and
my questions.
occupancy was of the facility, whether or not people were able to, talk to their family and talk to their lawyers, which is their right to do, and particularly if there's some plan, some secret plan to try to expand that facility in the near future. So we are still on the case. I am still following up, and I want to thank those of you who have reached out to express concern, and those of you who've asked questions again about how I stand on these issues and what it is that we're
He's doing
fighting
fucking
for.
good,
From the
okay? He's
very
doing good.
beginning, I've been fighting to fix
Yeah, he
a
has.
broken
Yep.
immigration system, and that is a comprehensive approach, not one of these piecemeal things that doesn't get us to the outcomes that all of us should want for
No,
every
I've
community, and
been
that is
fighting it
for
also.
a system that keeps families together, that provides certainty for those who are here, and a pathway for them to earn citizenship or their visa status, and that ensures that we have a secure border that protects the United States and our communities in the future. And that's what I'm working towards.
Yep.
Thanks, Congressman. Shifting gears, we have Susan and Skylin who have both asked about a piece of legislation you are championing, and it's the Fair Bet Act, which relates to how gaming is treated as part of the Big Ugly Bill. Could you talk a bit about that and why you think it's important to make sure that we undo what the Republicans put in the bill?
Yeah, well, this is the problem of rushing through a partisan bill without real debate
That's all I
or
really wanted to show.
opportunity for
I
amendment.
actually asked the
Um,
questions.
in the Senate, they added a provision that basically has patrons who gamble on paying taxes on their losses. Go figure. And now, because of that provision, it's already hard enough to get people to visit and stay and spend money, which affects our economy and jobs. But now it's a disincentive if people lose money that they're literally going to be taxed on their losses, not just on their winnings. So I am a sponsor of the Fair Bet Act, which would fix that provision. But I'm also a sponsor of other bills. I'm the lead sponsor and champion on the TIPS Act to make no tax on tips permanent and to not have a cap on it like the current bill does. I'm also co-sponsoring a bill to fix some of the problems with the no tax on overtime, which also hurts a number of our workers and key sectors in Southern Nevada. So I'm trying to figure out how to make these policies work. I believe in helping families keep more of their hard-earned money and to incentivize uh, working families to have a fair and just tax system, not one that only favors the billionaires and the big corporations, but actually puts the needs of working people at the forefront. So we have a host of bills that deal with that, from the TIPS Act to no tax on overtime to this Fair Bet Act. And I'm hoping that my Republican colleagues will put, again, partisanship aside and work with us to make these common sense corrections to their betrayal of a tax bill that favors the very wealthy.
Thanks, Congressman. One of the questions we've seen came from Brian Harwood, who's concerned about wasteful spending, which is something you've shown concern about too. And he specifically asked about how the big ugly bill could affect the national deficit. We know that the Congressional Budget Office said it would add to the deficit by close to 3.5 trillion. Could you talk a bit about why that's concerning to you and how it affected your decision to not vote for the bill?
Yeah, it's irresponsible, it's reckless, and it is not fiscally prudent to pass legislation that just grows the federal debt. So the one big beautiful bill, I call it one big betrayal of a bill, the big ugly bill, whatever you want to call it. The Congressional Budget Office, which is a nonpartisan professional office, has indicated that that bill adds $3.5 trillion to the federal debt. Now, to be clear, it doesn't do that and provide health care for families. It provides tax cuts to billionaires, some of whom don't even pay their share of taxes now.
Saying that they're
so
okay paying.
The idea that we would add to the federal debt to give tax breaks to the wealthy and then cut health care for the average working class families, to me, is reckless, it is irresponsible, and it is not fiscally prudent. That is why I'm working really hard to try to fix the enhanced premium tax credits so that families don't see their premiums for health care under the Affordable Care Act go up, let alone go up 200%. And I'm also working to, keep more of people's hard-earned money in their pocket. I also want to say this. This was a choice. It didn't have to be this way. Unfortunately, because, again, Republicans are in control of the House, the Senate, and the White House, they passed this bill with not one Democratic vote.
Yeah, that's what we're
in the House or the Senate. And so what that means is they didn't have to negotiate. They didn't have to come to the table and try to work these things out. Had they worked them out, I would have been able to make the no tax on tips permanent without a cap because that's what tip workers in Nevada need. They need a raise. They need to keep more of their
Yeah.
hard earned money, not more rich people getting more tax
Mm-hmm.
breaks on the backs of working families, and to add more debt to the federal deficit. So
That part.
that is one area that we're working on, as well as just incentivizing other good policies like creating economic opportunity, not causing economic uncertainty like these tariffs, which are taxes that Americans pay. Every time the administration says, look at all this money that's coming in to the US Treasury from these tariffs, those are taxes that Americans paid. Foreign governments don't pay them. They pass them through to businesses, and businesses pass them on to consumers, and it's American consumers who
Oh
are
my
paying
God,
that.
this
And
is,
now
I
we're
know.
seeing it.
So true.
Building homes is costing more. The cost of healthcare, because of the components that go into our medical devices, is costing more, including prescription drugs. Energy costs are going through the roof because some of the supply chain that we need for our energy is being affected by these tariffs, and tourism, which is the lifeblood of our economy,
And that's
is
like the one thing
down
is
and
like
is
our tourism
being
has
affected as a
changed.
result of these tariffs. So we have to take these policies in. um, I want to say it like when you add up the cumulative effect of these policies, the cuts on working families, including those to health care that we're talking about tonight, to give tax
Everybody should
breaks to
have
the
health
very
care.
wealthy, adding $3.5 trillion to the federal debt deficit, and the tariffs, which are taxes,
Yeah,
all
it
of
doesn't
these
matter.
things
There's
taken
nothing you
together
can do for real.
are causing chaos and a hell of a lot of uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
And whether you are a family struggling to make things, uh, to make your budget, or a small business that is deciding whether to hire more people, these are the challenges that I'm hearing from families and from all of you. And it's why I'm going to keep listening, keep leaning in, keep learning, and keep lifting up your voices. So I do need your help. I need you to share with me more information about how these policies are affecting you. If you tune into any of the congressional hearings and you hear me speak, you know that I always try to lift up a constituent story to make these policies real. Those that I'm fighting for, as well as those that I'm working against, so that we can put a human face on the toil of who's affected. When you center the people in the policy, you cannot go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, right now, we have a whole lot of special interests, a whole lot of donors who are getting all the favor from this one big beautiful bill, and the working people who make this country great are the ones who are being left out and left behind. And we have to make sure that we center their voices and their experiences. So I hope that answered your question, Brian. Appreciate you tuning in.
Thanks, Congressman. We'll take just, we have time for about one or two more questions. And I want to go back and talk a bit about the concerns we're seeing in the chat from on the potential shutdown. There are questions about the potential loss of healthcare subsidies, and from Richard. And Maria had a specific question about how a shutdown could affect her hospital in Pahrump and rural hospitals more broadly. Uh, you know, you have an incredibly diverse district and have been outspoken on the need to protect healthcare costs. Could you talk a bit about the effects of the big ugly bill on rural Nevada specifically, and on why you are so committed to fighting to lower healthcare costs as part of the shutdown debate?
Yeah, well, look, I believe that every community deserves access to quality, affordable healthcare. It is a human right, and it's an economic imperative too. Um, Right now in Pahrump, for example, there is not a birthing center in Pahrump. And there are very limited OBGYN services. So what does that mean? It means families that are trying to have a baby or deliver a baby, they have to drive in from Pahrump to Las Vegas to receive that care.
Wow.
And if there's a challenge or there's an issue,
Crazy.
they may not get to that care. We have seniors in rural parts of our district, whether it's in Lincoln County or in Esmeralda or Mineral, that have to drive 3-4 hours to get that care. And what we're seeing is the this budget battle, potential government shutdown, which is all around healthcare, directly affects rural communities, including those in Nevada. Now, the big ugly bill, because of the cuts to Medicaid, 1 in 3 Nevadans receive their health care through Medicaid. So we are already at risk of seeing 2 rural hospitals close because of those cuts. That's why one of the things I'm calling for is to cancel the cuts to Medicaid, to lower the cost by extending the enhanced premium tax credits, and to protect
really
and secure
don't give a
people's
fuck.
health care,
Like, a lot of this
including
administration does
prescription
not give a fuck
drugs and
about
other priorities.
the
That's
poor.
for all communities,
A lot.
rural and urban. And I was
And then
just out
seeing,
at UMC,
Congressman
the
like
University
him,
Medical Center, which is our
it's
only
like, dude,
Trauma
like,
One
we still
hospital
have
in
hope.
all of Nevada.
Like, we still have hope. Like, let's
They,
keep going.
over 50% of the people, I think it's over 60% of their patients are on Medicaid. If those cuts go through, that hospital will see dire setbacks. And they're not just setbacks on those who are covered by Medicaid. They're talking about cuts that will affect everyone's quality of care, because it means fewer nurses, fewer doctors, fewer
I was just at the hospital last night, so that's
specialty
crazy.
care that goes to everyone. So we are working extremely hard. I want to thank those of you from rural Nevada who are on. Please, please, please share with me and my staff your experiences. I know that healthcare was a struggle before these cuts and before this budget battle that we're in and a potential shutdown. These cuts and this budget could only make it worse, not better. That's why I am trying desperately to find an alternative, which is a bipartisan alternative, one that cancels the cuts, that lowers the cost, and that protects your health care, whether it's in rural Nevada or in the urban areas of Southern Nevada. So thank you again for your question.
Thanks, Congressman. We have time for about one more question, and I want to highlight some of the concerns we've seen in the chat from people like Darcel and John and Diane, all of whom are concerned about the future of our democracy, about concerns around free speech and the curtailing of rights more broadly. And Jessica Funderburk, who asks about how people can make their voices heard and is also interested in bipartisanship. And all of these together seem to speak to the fear, concern, anxiety that you have heard from constituents as you've been in the district and that you hear from folks every day. Could you end tonight's town hall by talking to folks about what they can do to stay involved and what they can do when they feel anxious or hopeless, and how they can turn that into action?
Well, it's one of the biggest questions that I get nowadays. And look, you know, we can disagree about the current direction of our country, but we all should agree that we can agree to disagree respectfully, and that, number one, political violence must always be rejected. Otherwise, we're all less safe.
Yep.
And the tragic events, the death of Charlie Kirk and those who followed him, it never should happen. Denouncing his murder does not endorse an ideology either, and rejecting his harmful comments should not endorse political violence. The question goes to what can we all do right now in this moment? Number one, take care of yourself and your families. We have to keep our communities safe. Number two, continue to show up. Show up in conversations like this tonight. Show up in community meetings and neighborhood meetings. Continue to speak up on behalf of yourself, your family, your community, your coworkers, your church, your synagogue. Continue to lift up your voices and speak up on behalf of the things that we all hold dear. And continue to be engaged. I know more and more people are feeling like, is this worth it? And, should I just check out and, put my energy elsewhere? And I get it. Honestly, there are days that I feel the same frustration. But I also know that we have a lot of hope, that there's a lot of change, and there's a lot of people who are counting on all of us, quite frankly, to do what is necessary to keep our democracy, our core of our institutions whole and intact. And no one person in one office can dismantle that spirit of who we are and what we stand for. And so I want to, again, thank all of you because you give me that hope. And that is why I am still in this work and in this fight and will continue to do everything that I can to both uphold the ideals that I know people are expecting and, to change the tenor and the tone so that we remained on the things that people need us focused on: lowering cost, protecting people's health care, securing people's jobs and their opportunity to have economic opportunity and not causing economic uncertainty. That's what I'm trying to do in my part, and really value all of you helping us in that effort. So thank you. If I haven't answered your question, I want you to know that we are here to serve and to remind all of you that you can contact us at any time. My district office is 702-963-9360. I want to thank my district staff for working overtime many days and many hours to take your calls, to be responsive, to do the outreach. You can also go to my website at horsford.house.gov to sign up for our newsletter and to stay informed about the work that we're doing. Again, while you're there, click the big banner at the top to send me a message and to share how these policies coming out of Washington are impacting you and your everyday lives, whether it's veterans, Social Security, Medicare, small business, education, what have you. Please tell us what it is that you're feeling, that your family is feeling, so that I can hear and take those stories to heart, to use them in our testimony, and to continue to work on your behalf. So thank you again for tuning in tonight, and I appreciate everybody being on. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you, Congressman. Good night, everybody.
Okay. That wasn't bad at all. Oh, hold on. Let me move this over to self. Alright, I'm gonna get off. I just wanted to do that because, that was interesting. That was an interesting experience for sure. I appreciate him answering questions that actually make me feel like I'm being heard. You feel me? Cause yeah. I'll see you guys later. I gotta get to work. I got a lot to do. I do. I finally get to get back to